Hi, it's Ileana, and today I'm going to be discussing a new book that I have finished writing. It's called Journey of Connecting with the Galactic Mayans and Exploring the Atlantic Arc Ship. So I've done several remote viewings of the Atlantic Arc Ship, and I've been working on these remote viewings for the last couple of months, and I've also been doing some research after the remote viewings were completed because there's interesting connections between the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Syrians, and the being called Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan, because this particular Atlantic space arc ship, it has the histories of Earth, the various civilizations that have lived here on Earth, advanced ones like the Syrians, the Mayans, the Aztecs, and also there's information about Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan. So these are two gods, creator gods, that the Mayans and the Aztecs, it's part of their myths and legends that they were given knowledge by these two gods to how to start their civilization, like mathematics, calendar, writing, that kind of stuff, to advance their civilizations. And I had seen writings and carvings and symbols on the walls of the Atlantic Arc Ship that there was such a being as Quetzalcoatl, or called the serpent, the feathered serpent god. This representation is actually something that is part of Earth history. There have been advanced humanoid civilizations that came from the stars, that came from outer space to teach humans advanced forms of mathematics, writing, art, language, culture, farming. So that did happen in history. So some of this describes this Atlantic Arc ship has information about that type of a history. And I'd seen some of this in the carvings. Also how Egypt was influenced by these advanced civilizations, the Egyptians. I got to see some of the ascension rites that was in the Atlantic Arc ship history, human history. So as well as where the Arc ship came from and who the founders are. So this is what I talk about in this book. And this book is specifically on the Galactic Mayans, where they come from. They come from the Pleiades. They're connected to Sirius, the Syrians. So we talk about link between Sirius, Lyra, and the Galactic Mayans, as well how this links to the Atlantic Ocean Arc ship. I did the remote viewing, secret military energy production platform in middle of Atlantic Ocean. So that took me a couple of weeks to do. That was the first remote viewing I did in December 2022. And then I did first remote viewing of the Arc ship under the Atlantic Ocean. So that's covered in the book. I also cover the symbols of founding cedar races on the Atlantic Arc ship walls. And I had also formed a connection with the Atlantic Arc ship. That's why I said we, because it contacted me and asked me through the thought consciousness connection to have a closer look at it. So I did a second remote viewing, and I saw characteristics of the Atlantic Arc ship. It gave me more information in the second remote viewing. I was able to see more in-depth things. I got a second invite to look at it because the first time I had actually gone there, the Galactic Mayans had helped me to go inside the Atlantic Arc ship because there's a certain song of the ancients that if you are able to sing the song and you are acoustically vibrating at the right frequency, you can enter the Arc ship and you can interact with it. And that's what happened the first time. But I wanted to remote view it from a neutral perspective without really knowing anything. Even though I had seen the Arc ship, for me, remote viewing is very neutral. For me, it's about what's there. Not what I just saw when I went there, but what's more. What's more there, the whole Arc ship. Because I did not see the whole Arc ship the first time. I saw the genetic vault chambers. I saw some of the parks. I saw some of the domes. But I didn't see all of it. There's a lot of portals, gardens, there's quarters, living quarters, because it's habitable. It's a colony ship. So it also has this interesting magnetic field spinning drives, hieroglyphics, biological bodies in the genetic vault chamber. It has several chambers like that. And it's a Space Ark Cedar colony ship. And I'd seen more ships in its library database. So I got to see the library chambers database, what it's like living on the Space Ark Cedar colony ships. I was shown that information. And I also did some observations about the Space Ark ships for this book. And I also was looking for the Atlantic Arc ship and connections to the Aztecs and Quetzalcoatl. And I was seeing a lot of advanced civilizations. So I did a lot of research after the remote viewing connected to the creation of the golden-haired gods, connections to Quetzalcoatl and beings called the Anuna, and then Aztec god Quetzalcoatl, Mayan god Kukulkan, and the return of the gods, Aryans to India. So there's connections to India, there's connections to Atlantis, Lemuria. There's a lot of interesting connections and Earth histories that this Atlantic Space Ark reveals. And for me, what I remote viewed and saw on the Ark ship was interesting, but I actually wanted to see if there's any research information that backs it up, and there seems to be research backing things up as well. So I'm going to show what this book has inside of it. And I had seen Ark ships in Egypt as well, flying over Egypt. So I wanted to include that information because the Atlantic Arc ship showed me so the Atlantic Arc ship had shown me that there had been other Arc ships activated in ancient Egypt, and people had seen them flying over Egypt in one of the carved scenes on the walls of the Arc ship. So that was shown to me, and a lot of other interesting things, and that these Arc ships are activating. So there's a link between Sirius, Lyra, and the Galactic Mayans. So this is where I talk about the Galactic Mayans and my connection to them and the history of Sirius and the Mayans. That's very interesting. So this is what this write-up is about, because there's a lot of history and genetics and other things that connect to these Arc ships. And this is what this is a rendering of what this particular Atlantic space ark looks like, because it has many domes and levels to it. It's a self-sustainable habitat system. People can live on this ark ship for prolonged periods of time. And this is some of the Theban writing that I did, because I study ancient languages and I primarily work in Theban when I do any type of ancient historical aspect to galactic history. I will sometimes write in Theban. And what I wrote, what this is in Theban, is this: much will be revealed about the Atlantic ark ship. That's what this write-up is. That's the translation of it. I wanted to do something special and different than what I usually do, so I sort of wrote this little inscription to show that there's ancient languages. That's on the ark ships. For sure, the carvings, there was carvings in Syrian, Egyptian, Aztec, and Mayan that I had seen. But I do my writing in Theban. I am very much connected to the Theban magical language coding and scribing, so that is my connection. And it's different from the carvings on the ark ship, but I wanted to show that there are some similarities. This is similar to what I had seen. And this is the first remote viewing of the military energy production platform in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And under that is the ark ship itself, because the US military has set up shop studying, attempting to study the ark ship. So they have their own platform with a huge elevator going down underwards underneath the ark ship. So the platform is how you actually get down to the ark ship. The military units and the scientists and the archaeologists, they go down through the elevator and they go down to a transportational hub system that takes them down to the ark ship. But not everybody can get inside the ark ship because it's protected by these acoustic sound fields. And so you have to have a certain vibration to get inside it. So only specific people have been able to go inside it. And thanks to the Mayans and the Song of the Ancients, I was able to go inside the ark ship and visit it physically. It is very, very interesting. So this is the book. That's the first remote viewing, and this is the first remote viewing of the ark ship itself. And they talk about the genetic vaults, what this ark ship looks like. That's my first impression of it, my first view after being inside it, and then doing the remote viewing. This has domes, this has habitats. It has 4 genetic vaults with ET DNA, humanoid DNA, plants, animals. These are seeder ships. That's the nature of these arks. They're Akashic Records vessels and seeder ships. So they hold ancient history of our universe, planets, and seeding life on other planets to make planetary systems habitable. So this is what the ark ship looks like. It had fields of green, blue, and purple around it. That's what it looked like, when it was flying in the sky. This particular ark ship can fly in the planetary atmosphere, and it can also travel underwater. Now, it had landed about 100,000 years ago, and the crew of it came out and they were teaching humans things about agriculture, about how to start a civilization. So they had met humans before. And there's still 20 to 100 biological beings on this particular Ark ship. I think it's some of the crew and the navigational pilots in the genetic vaults. They're in stasis pods. That's what I saw in their remote viewing. I didn't look too closely at the pods, stasis pods, when I was there. I was looking more at the genetic vaults themselves. But the stasis pods are in the genetic vaults. So there's beings in stasis inside this Ark ship. And it's like it has cities. It's the size of several baseball fields. This is how big these Ark ships get. Because they can transport thousands of people. And thousands of people can live on them. They're living habitats with domes on these Ark ships. So this is what the entrance sort of looks like to the Ark ship. And it's a likeness image. So just a representation. It's very beautiful. And this is one of the Mayan portal arc systems that the ancient Mayans had. The one that's around the Atlantic Ark ship looks a little different, but there is similarities, and we'll see that soon. So that's a Mayan portal arc that I saw in one of the library databases on the Atlantic Ark ship. Mayan and Syrian portal system. And then I saw physical portals as well, inside the Ark and around it. So these are some of the carved symbols of the founding cedar races for the Atlantic Ark ship, what I saw on the walls. I saw Syrian symbols and planetary maps and Sirius. I saw a lot of things about Sirius. I saw a lot of things about Aldebaran, Algol, Alphecca, Antares, Arcturus, Capella, Deneb, Algeda, Algorab, the Pleiades, because the Mayans come from the Pleiades. I saw Polaris, Procyon, Regulus, Sirius, Spica, Vega. And there's many more other systems and planetary maps, but these were the main ones that I saw. Lyra came up a lot, as well as Lyra. So Lyra system came up, and that a lot of these Ark ships came from the Lyra constellation. This was on the displays of what I saw. And again, I saw a lot of Sirius type of writings. So this was what predominantly where I was in the sections of the Syrians, history of Earth and in the galaxy. And I saw a lot of symbols. And I saw ancient language knowledge symbols with hieroglyphics and carvings on the walls. Mayan, Aztec, Egyptian, that's what they looked like to me. And this is the sort of, this was the most interesting part for me. A depiction of the Egyptians seeing an Ark ship above the Giza pyramids. And they were doing ascension rites rituals. There was a sarcophagus underneath the pyramids. So there's portals, portal systems underneath the Giza Plateau pyramids and the Sphinx, and it leads to Inner Earth and the halls of Amenti. So they 20,000 years 26,000 years ago, apparently the guardians of the crystals and the priestesses were doing ascension rites, rituals to basically, once the guardians had done their missions on Earth, they were going through the ascension rites to go home to their points of origin, to their planetary points of origin, through the portals, either through the inner Earth portal or Amante portal, Halls of Amante portal, to go back home, because they're galactic humans from other planets. Once their missions here on Earth were done, they were ready to be going home, and they went through the ascension rites underneath the pyramids to do that. And then I was shown sort of semicircular crafts with somewhat of a triangular shape hovering above the water. And I was shown some things about Antarctica as well. In one of the scenes from the carvings on the Atlantic Arc ships, I decided to include that here because it was very memorable to me. And this is what some of the library knowledge repositories look like to me. It had a lot of interesting symbols and depictions. Some of the stuff I didn't really understand. There's several knowledge repository chambers, libraries with scrolls, tablets, holographic crystal discs, and other things that are on this Atlantic Arc ship. And it's a ancient library knowledge repository, many chambers on this craft. And then I did the second remote viewing, characteristics of the Atlantic Arc ship. And I had seen how these arc ships look like and how they land, their characteristics, portals, magnetic field spinning drives, hieroglyphics, biological bodies. There's so much to this Atlantic Arc ship. This is the field spinning drives underneath it. Again, this is just a likeness image, but it has that on it. And this is what some of those stasis pods look like with the biological beings in the suspended cryoanimation stasis. So they look like they're sleeping. The remote viewing showed they look like they're somewhat mummified. I don't know what actual cryogenic suspended animation would look like, what you would look like. But in the pods, they looked like just sleeping. And again, I briefly saw the pods, didn't really study the beings, but they looked like they were sleeping to me. Remote viewing showed almost a mummified state in cryogenic suspended animation. So they look like beings sleeping inside stasis pods. And this is what these types of stasis pods look like, because they look like sarcophagi somewhat. And that's the best image that I could find of that, what that looks like. Because it's very specific in what it looks like. And it has this kind of greenish blue glow. And you can see a form inside the pod, that there's beings inside. I'm not sure if they're fully alive or they're in hibernation, stasis. I don't know. I didn't touch them. I didn't open the pods. You're not supposed to touch the pods or open them. So I think it's some of the navigators and the pilots of this arc ship. And they could be alive potentially. I'm not sure 100%. There was also holographic chambers where images of people would appear and even talk to you, because they're just holograms sharing history of the arc ship and what it is and the histories of the planet and the different advanced civilizations that have lived there, here, and on the Ark ship itself that have lived there. And you can fully integrate and interact. What I mean is integrate, like you can touch the hologram. It could be men, women. It's images of people that actually were on these Ark ships, and you can interact with the system. And they'll tell you histories, and you can ask them questions. And this is a blue and purple sphere, protoplasma sphere, that was inside the Ark ship. And it acts as a Stargate portal. And it has blue-purple energetics. It's really interesting because you can interact with it, and it creates an energetic blue portal system that can take you somewhere else off planet. And you're standing there in the field, and it feels a little like water is all around you, but it's not water, it's plasma. And I saw that as well on the Ark ship. And this is another one of these holographic chambers, another type that I saw. And then there's a makeshift lab set up above the Atlantic Ark ship on the military platform station because they're trying to study the Ark ships. So they did create a lab on the military platform station. And it's what a typical lab looks like: white, gray walls, many different areas with instruments for studying artifacts and things that are not from Earth. And this is what one of these holographic chambers looks like that scans DNA and can tell you what genetics a being has, where they come from galactically, or animals. It was showing me stuff about fish and genetic makeup of fish from other planets, as well as galactic humanoids from other planets. You can ask it to show you almost anything about genetics and DNA. Because again, these Ark ships are seeder ships. They carry genetic blueprint codes and genetics of other beings to seed life forms on other planets. That's the primary nature of these Ark ships, plus the Akashic records, galactic histories of universe creation, different beings, worlds. So this is what some of these holographic chambers more closely look like. And it was awe-inspiring to see this. And this is what one of the Mayan portal system chambers looks like. It's in a chamber. It looks like it's in a chamber, and it looks very ancient and old. The portal system, the Mayan Aztec portal system, still works. It's like columns with purple-blue light activating the subterranean underground locations where ancient civilizations live on Earth. It's pathways to inner Earth and other places. When I looked at this, like it was inside the Ark ship and outside. One of them was outside it, and it emits a purple-blue light field. And if you are vibrationally attuned to it, you can go through it. And it has symbols, so you telepathically can connect to the symbols. And it creates a pathway to take you somewhere else on the planet or underneath. These particular portals, the Mayan Aztec portals, they go to inner Earth. They go to subterranean underground systems where other beings live from these ancient civilizations that survived the fall of Atlantis, Lemuria, and Mu. They moved underground in parts of inner Earth and other subterranean locations. And this is what one of the Mayan Aztec columns had on it. So it has physical symbols on it to activate the key sequence of the portals to go to places on Earth. And this is what some of these ancient cosmic Mayans looked like, the impressions that I got. These are some of the other arc ships that I saw. So these are some of the other forms of arc ships that I had seen in the library databases on the Atlantic arc ship and the Space Ark Cedar Colony ships. It showed me many different images and styles of arc ships and what it's like to live on these interesting arc ships. And I was shown how the arc ships actually travel through trans-dimensional travel capabilities. They can create wormholes and activate wormholes to travel through. They can travel beyond the speed of light to other galaxies and universes. That's the capabilities of these ancient space arcs. They're trans-dimensional, interdimensional, going through wormholes, opening wormholes, creating wormholes, and traveling through them. So I was shown that. I was shown what it's like to live on the Space Ark Cedar Colony ships. They have their own atmospheres, gravity, biodomes, gardens, oceans, lakes, hydroponic food growing facilities. So it's self-sustainable living habitats with cities. So civilizations have lived on these arc ships and they've traveled on them. So they've traveled on them and lived on them. It's amazing to see these habitable worlds on arc ships. And it looks like you're on a planet when you're inside an arc ship, because it simulates an atmosphere, it simulates sunlight, night, daytime. It simulates a real livable habitat with everything on it that you need to live for a long period of time, with quarters where you can sleep, places to eat, green spaces. It's quite amazing, and that's still active on these arc ships. So they can actually transport people even now because they're activating. So if there's some kind of an emergency on the planet, evacuations need to happen, people can inhabit these arc ships, up to 10,000 people, even more. And these are some of my observations about the arc ships, the Atlantic arc ship that I observed. There's connections to Dolores Cannon because she talked about them as well, about other facilities in Antarctica similar to these arc ships. And Antarctica has its own arc ships, actually. So there's connections. This is some of the scanning technology on the arc ships because it can show you different planetary systems, how the arc ships work and travel in outer space. And these are some of the biodomes, because the arc ships have domes and biodomes. That's the living habitats. So I saw some of those domes. And again, the connections between the Atlantic arc ship and connections to the Aztecs and Quetzalcoatl. This is the research that I did. And yeah, it's so much information about Quetzalcoatl, the Ileana, the ancient gods, Atlantis, Lemuria, and other advanced civilizations. So this is the research part and the tree of knowledge and how that's connected to the arc ship, Atlantic arc ship, and the other ones. It seems to be a connection and a system, ancient system. So this is talking about that and the golden gods and who they are. Some history. because these ark ships seem to have history on all the ancient civilizations that were here on Earth. So more stuff on Aztec god Quetzalcoatl, Mayan god Kukulkan, and the return of the gods, and their connections to India as well. So that's interesting. And this is an image, a representation likeness of what Quetzalcoatl looks like. And they worked with crystals and staffs and crystalline technology, according to what the Atlantic Ark ship showed me. This is a bit of a bigger picture of the Egyptians seeing an Ark ship, some of the portal technology on the arks and beside the arks, and the Atlantic Ark ship and other Ark ships seem to have a energetic connection to portals and pyramids. So I wanted to show a representation of that as well in the artwork. And just some of these arks are huge. They're the size of space stations, or bigger even, what I saw in the library repository. So I wanted to include some images of that as well to show. So that's the new book about Ark ships, particularly the Atlantic Ark ship, Galactic Mayans, Syrians, and other civilizations connected to the Arks, and history about the Ark ships. I wanted to share that, and the book is available on Amazon, and it's also available in PDF format on my website, and all the links will be in the description for the book and the book description and where to get the book. Thank you so much, and namaste.